next morning. I stepped out of the washroom, toothbrush dangling from my mouth, while I headed for the museum room. It was super early, in fact. I was already dressed and ready to go, while most of the students still slept or were hungover. Despite my tipsy night, my head felt clear. I grabbed my phone, which had been plugged into an outlet to recharge. I shoved it into my pocket, then paused. It's cold in here. And Shoji stayed for hours, wondering if he should sleep here instead? Poor guy. Aww. Oh, there's that gallant gentleman. Hey! Poor Shoji. When I neared my tent, Shoji emerged from his. As he sat down to put on his shoes, I pulled out the toothbrush from my mouth and waved. Morning. Good morning. He looked exhausted. Again, I'm sorry about everything last night. His fingers fumbled with the shoelaces, and he kept his gaze down like he was trying to solve a puzzle. No, I should be sorry for, waking... Shoji, don't apologize. You really shouldn't feel sorry when I'm the one who caused trouble for you. It was all my fault. You did nothing wrong. I assure you it won't happen again, but, on the odd chance it does, feel free to just kick me awake. Or, delete my Ishtara save file. That'll teach me. Shoji appeared stunned. Oh, that's really serious, and I don't think it's quite that bad that I'd have to delete your Ishtara file. Perish the thought. But he laughed weakly at my joke. I'm sure I won't have to resort to that. Great. I'll see you around. He nodded and we went our separate ways. At least the apology dispersed some of the awkwardness from last night, and it was all water under the bridge anyway. Phew. I sat at the table munching on a piece of toast. It was pretty packed, and as usual I was located near the end. Oh. Ugh. Already? Really? Okay, alright, you want to get it over and done with in the beginning, Nose. I get it. Ugh. Pardon-moi. I was where the livelier conversations took place in the middle. And then a short glass slid into my view, water rippling in it. And maybe a tissue too, because I just sneezed.
Morning. Slept well, I hope.
I decided not to bring up the whole wrong tent incident. Him. I did. I don't even have a headache.
Ah, instead of consuming too much, you drank too fast.
I picked up the glass and took a sip. Thanks for the water. Merci.
De rien. Think of it as a small apology for last night.
Oh, don't worry about it. You're not my babysitter, and I should have been more aware of my drinking. Thanks for escorting me back, though. I appreciate it.
I did what any decent person would do. Besides, you're in a new country. I think you're allowed to enjoy yourself once in a while.
Party hard in New Zealand or something?
Did I ever? I was glad I arrived a month before classes started, or it would have shown in my grades. Also, I finally will be working in the cave.
Nice! Were you waiting on your photograph?
Yup, some squares had to have their pictures retaken for better resolution. I may or may not work in the lab longer, though. Mr. DuPont will be hurrying to approve other students' pictures, too.
You could always ask Sherry. I think she has some authority here, too.
Sherry?
Sherry Keller, my professor.
Of course, Americans address teachers by their first name.
Is it different here?
Really different. In fact, I think some students mistook Sherry for your grandma. A professor overseeing their students in an elective? Unheard of. No one calls their teachers by their first name, and it's always strictly formal. If you want to talk to your professor, it's by appointment only.
Huh, I wonder how I do in an environment like that.
That's one thing I missed about New Zealand. It wasn't as rigid, and I'd gotten so used to it I practically had reverse culture shock coming back. There's a lot of things I miss in New Zealand.
Planning to return there one day?
You bet. Eventually I started saving up recently. Travel is darn expensive.
He laughed at my nod of agreement. The plane tickets here alone had cleaned up my savings. Everything else was from begging my parents to fund me for this trip. Checking the time, I chewed the last of my toast and gulped down the water. I'll see you at the cave then. Later, boo. Back to my gaming. Oh no! Come on, Ishtara! Oh no! I keep dying in my game now. Yay! Are you sure you'll be fine alone? Yeah, my parents got all concerned when they learned I no longer have a traveling partner. I was strongly advised not to go off on my own, since it's my first time being this far from home. Although I tried to be nonchalant about it, my sulkiness still surfaced. It's probably for the best. However, I'm sure you'll make friends and be able to venture out more. If you'd like, I can ask some of the students to see if they're interested in hosting you on the weekends. Me? I'd hate to impose. I know you're reluctant, but it would be nice to spend time with students outside the dig site. True, and see more of Belgium too. It's a shame Paige couldn't make it. Where are you staying anyway? Oh, at a colleague's. I've known him and his husband for years. I would bring you along, but it's a small house and... She trailed off and I nodded understandingly. I did not want to impose on her catch-up time with friends. Will the museum be completely locked up once Augustin leaves? Everything's safe for the back entrance so you can access it. You can lock it from the inside at night. I imagine you'll be sleeping on the second floor? Yes, Augustin already set up an air mattress for me, and I moved some of my belongings. I think we've gone over everything then. There's leftovers in the fridge, and the Wi-Fi will remain on. I heard the laboratory door opening and closing, and Augustin flashed me a warm smile. All of the other students had left for home for the weekend, and it was just us three. Soon to be one now that they were ready to depart.
Melissa, I assume Sherry has gone over everything.
Yes.
Wonderful. Although this is the first time in many years someone had remained here alone.
There was an ominous yet playful smirk, and I could not help but be wary. Why?
They are scared of the wrath of the Neanderthal whose bones we found.
I think I'll survive these 48 hours, Augustin.
What a brave girl. I hear it gets very eerie at night.
Bye. We exchanged goodbyes, and I heard the clicking of the front door being locked. When it got very quiet, I pushed the thought of ghosts out of my head. I have a whole museum to myself. I bet not many people can say that. Yeah. The lights are on. Is someone here? What's all this? There were multiple wooden trays laid out on the center table. Each contained various rock samples along with paper slips labeled under each one. I approached and peered at the trays. Calcaire, de schiste, gray. Were they studying something, or would this be a part of another upcoming lecture? Get permission. I should ask first before I start picking up museum property. Nestled against the wall was a small table. Usually it was bare, but now there was a laptop and someone seated in front of it. Excusez-moi. Oui, comment puis-je t'aider? Je ne parle pas français.
Sherry's student, I presume?
He approached me casually and stood beside the table. Yes, I'm Melissa Flores, studying under Sherry. Pleased to meet you. He offered his left hand, and I accepted it with a firm shake. Hendrik Luquenhai is at your service. Never gonna get your name. Hendrik, the geologist? Augustin's nephew? That's me. I was supposed to be here earlier, but was caught in a landslide at work back in Germany. Thought I'd catch up on a few things before Monday. He jutted his chin toward the samples. Were you going to ask about those? Yes, I didn't want to poke around without permission. Can I? Feel free to look around if you'd like. Merci. I picked a rock up, the one labeled calcaire. This material was everywhere in the cave. Limestone. I placed it down and examined one beside it, labeled shale. Where did this collection come from? From one of the cabinets? It's mine, actually. Many of the rocks are ones I've dug up or personally found. I thought it'd be nice to have some examples to show the students here. Especially if they can't tell the difference between chert and shale yet. And what is the difference? He eagerly motioned me over to the tray, picked up a dark rock and offered it to me. It felt grainy in my hand. First off, shale is composed of silt and clay, and it's a very soft rock. You've probably seen shale at road cuts or by the riverbanks. And this is chert. You can already note the waxy luster, and it's much harder than shale. I held the sample in my other hand. It also felt smoother than shale, almost like glass. This is what you need to keep an eye out for. A lot of stone tools were crafted out of chert. Fortunately, they tend to stand out like new when you uncover them. I can tell you've given this lecture many times. I'm guessing most students have never worked with rocks before. Yep, many are into art, computers, or music. I returned the rocks to their rightful spot. What were you doing in Germany? Pretty much what I do here. Supervise excavators, examine and compile soil samples, figure out the stratigraphy. I essentially chalk out a map of the cave to study the sediments and its history. That sounds difficult. You'd think sedimentary formations would be more straightforward. Older on the bottom, more recent on the top. You'd think, but geology is never that nice and easy. How to best describe this? Do you like cake? Next time. I do. Great, it'll make the analogy easier. What are the chances you've tried a Prince Regented tort? Very low. Non-existent, in fact. Then, Black Forest? Less layers than I'd like, but you get the idea. Yes, I'm familiar with it. It'll work as long as I picture a multi-layered cake, right? Exactly. Cakes are like basic sediments. Consistent layers and patterns all around. Unlike cake, stratigraphy is a complex puzzle. Hendrik made multiple slices in the air with his hand, gradually lowering the elevation each time to emphasize the point. Layers are slanted due to how they were deposited, whether by alluvial means, weathering, freeze-thaw, gravity, cave-ins, the list goes on. And then just as the sediment starts to settle, a river or flood may come in and wash the top surfaces away, leaving nothing or portions of the same layer in isolated pockets. Badgers and other burrowing animals cut through layers, disrupting sediments further. Or something drastic could take place like an earthquake, creating faults and misaligned sediments. Therefore, it's up to me to figure it out. I hope I didn't bore you. People have always said I'm married to my job. It wasn't boring at all, honest. If anything, it made me realize how much work goes into understanding the cave's history. It's definitely not easy, but I enjoy the challenge of piecing information together. Since I'm here, I'll be available if you have any other questions or inquiries. He finished the last sentence like a well-rehearsed routine. How long have you worked here? Me? Let me think. Nearly 4 years now? I helped my uncle during the summer, and then hopped to a few other caves depending on their excavating schedules. After a glance upward, his eyes widened and he slapped his forehead. I'm supposed to be in the mirror soon. I hope I didn't startle you earlier. My uncle did mention there'd be a student staying here on the weekend, but it slipped my mind. No, that's fine. It was nice finally meeting you, Hendrik. Likewise. I'll be sure to ask you if I have any other geology questions. That's what I'm here for. I'll see you on Monday.
I'm back to my gaming over the weekend.
Woohoo! Oh no. Dance girl, dance girl. Yeah! Woo! Alright, first week, done. Relationships. 3 hearts with Shoji, who is a shy student who enjoys drawing and gaming. Kyler's not impressed with our antics. DeAndre, also I guess not too impressed. We haven't met Joan yet. And he's just our friendly neighborhood geologist helping a girl out. Okay, to the stats. So, Shoji, you're going to be in the cave on Monday. And then you're also volunteering with DeAndre. You're in the cave again on Tuesday. And you're volunteering again on Tuesday. Then you're in the lab on Wednesday. And you're, oh my goodness, you like to volunteer a lot apparently. Lab again. And volunteer. When can I do some interneting, Shoji? Okay. Gonna do some interneting. Maybe I should do 2 interneting. And then a couple of games and a dance. Okay, let's try it. Oh, chocolate hazelnut. You're worth the extra insulin. When I was done, I rolled the bread up and bit the end. My mouth glued shut as I chewed, while the spread smeared my cheek. Glad I was eating breakfast alone. I was being sloppy.
Bonjour.
Huh? Someone lightly pecked me on one cheek. The person immediately pulled back, and I hastily rubbed my face while he did the same. DeAndre, I was stuffing my face. At least warn me next time before you kiss me.
I could say the same.
What was with the kiss anyway?
It's how we greet friends. Usually the cheek kissing goes a little smoother than this one.
He eyed my breakfast and snorted teasingly.
Cute, Mel.
Hey, I wasn't expecting everyone to arrive so soon. Did you drive here?
We took the train. It only stops here every half an hour, so you either arrive early or slightly late.
Before I could question the we, DeAndre tapped the side of his cheek.
You still have some...
You too.
Still? Did you dunk your face into...
I did not. Your timing was just atrocious. While we were both cleaning ourselves, I noticed Kyler observing us with a deadpan expression. He frowned in disgust and disappeared around the corner with his belongings. It's not a Peru situation, I swear. DeAndre rubbed his temples like he had an impending headache.
I don't think he likes me.
Something happened?
Well... Do you remember that rowdy night?
Vaguely. I remembered that I wasn't even in the right tent more vividly.
Well, after you went to bed, a bunch of us started playing catch. I may or may not have nailed Kyler in the head with the ball.
Was he okay?
Yeah, he was fine if upset. I tried to apologize, but he wouldn't hear of it. Now he probably thought I was shamelessly flirting with you like some full-time playboy.
Oh, you aren't?
Part-time. Kyler seems to be the type where first impressions are everything.
I think you're right. He seemed to tolerate me once he learned I was serious about archaeology, even though I was thinking about Balrogs during our thing, but whatever.
Oh yeah, you two work in the same location.
About the ball incident. I'm not gonna talk to Kyler this time. That's just a whole mess that you boys can work it out. You're bros. Are you still gonna apologize?
I'll try. Not many opportunities to actually talk to the guy.
Still, it was an accident. I wonder why he reacted like that.
I think because it could have damaged the device he wears.
That makes sense. Hope he'll forgive you now. A few other students trickled in and I finished my breakfast before there were any more mishaps.
Anyway, where did you stay this weekend?
I furiously chewed my oversized portion, but DeAndre flashed me a patient, I'll wait smile. Coughing, I simply tapped the table since I couldn't talk.
Here, how was it?
I survived. When a car pulled in, I knew Augustin and Sherry had arrived. I waved to them as they got out, although inwardly I wanted to whine to Augustin about the whole ghost thing. After Sherry and I greeted each other, she handed my journal back. Be sure to read the comments in the journal when you have time. It'll give you an idea of how you're performing. Thank you, I will. Also, since this is your second week here, you now have the option to pick lab work if you'd like. Oh, right. I'll notify Hendrik. He handles Lab 101 here and can explain the procedures to you. Nice, it seems my options have opened up. Time for Lab 101. There sure are a lot of stuffing tools here. I perked up as Hendrik tapped the whiteboard with his prosthetic fingers, his speech continuing in French. His lecture was occasionally interrupted with polite giggles or groans, and he would grin at their reactions. Hendrik loved to deliver puns in any language, I mused. Once the explanation wrapped up, people collected plastic bags, each with a sheet inside. Some barely contained any material, while others had huge bones encased in tin foil. Sorry, I seem to drink some water. I feel... I don't know. I feel like I need some water. I think I might be starting to get sick. Maybe. So I feel like there's like a phlegm in my throat. Anyway, moving on. I grabbed a decently sized one with mostly smaller items and fished out the fiche along with a wrapped item. Is this your first time doing lab work? Yes, Sherry's gone over the procedures with a slide presentation, but it's different seeing it all up close. If you'd like, I can clarify a few things. I thought it'd be easier to do a little one-on-one instead of repeating myself in both languages and taking up more time. Really? Then... Okay, I was going to skip again, but I've been told that if I actually do the Lab 101 with Hendrik, and I get a scene with Shoji later this week, it'll give me an extra option to pick with him, so I'll go through this again. It's been a while anyway. Can you break down the lab process in its simplest form?
Clean objects, document them, repeat.
That's it.
That's it.
That was sure short and sweet.
When you've worked with many students with varying degrees of interest in archaeology, it helps to be concise. It's my own take on the KISS principle. Keep it simple for student.
There are so many tools used to clean. What's the general routine? He leaned over and pointed to the plastic bowl with a sieve placed over it.
Depending on how dirty the item is, use this to wash the majority of the soil off. If it's a bone, please don't let it stay submerged for too long, or it'll become saturated. It will end up damaging the object, especially if it's already cracked or flaking. Other times, you simply need to dunk a brush into the water if you're only cleaning a small section. Be sure to dry it thoroughly using a paper towel or lint-free cloth. Whether you use that step or not, it's on to using brushes and craft sticks.
I know about brushes, but craft sticks?
They're great for scraping muck off without scratching the remains. I'm partial to craft sticks myself, but everyone has their own preference. If you use a brush, be gentle and don't scrub too hard. And there are toothpicks, which are useful for cleaning teeth or porous items. If the object is relatively clean to begin with and doesn't need water, you can simply brush the dirt off. Be careful though. Some bones are too fragile to wash or clean. Use your judgment. There'll be a little trial and error at first, but you'll get the hang of it. Don't worry, I won't get upset if a bone falls apart.
Says the geologist. What if I drop a rock?
Handle those with extreme care, please.
I will, promise. Man, Hendrik's such a swell guy. I picked up the ink bottle and gave him an uncertain look. Why these? It looks like it'll be a messy process, and I've never used a nib pen before.
It stays on the bone or stone better than a regular ink pen, regardless of surface, and you have better control over the writing. I'm terrible at describing how to use one. I think if you hold it slightly lower than a regular pen and lightly pull, the ink should flow out evenly. Obviously, don't dunk the nib into the ink bottle like cookies and milk. Also, follow the number style I've written on the board.
I turned my head, studying the 1 to 9 that went down in a vertical column. The 3 was flat at the top, and the 7 had an extra line in the middle of it. The 1 had a little hook at the top with foundation. Is it to keep everything more consistent?
That, and we don't panic if a number fades. See...
He approached the board and wrote a bubbly 8. He then wiped half of it, turning it into a 3.
This is why. Same with the 7. If we lose a part of it, we won't mistake it for a 1 due to the line in the middle. It's extremely important to be able to identify its number. When you're done jotting down the fiche number and year, don't forget to coat it with a thin layer of clear nail polish to protect the ink. Make sure you let the ink dry first, or it'll become all blurry.
What happens if I mess up? I have a feeling whiteout won't help here.
Ah, then this is the fun part. You can use the nib to scrape off the ink. I don't recommend using it multiple times over the same surface, though. Then you'll end up destroying the very item we're trying to preserve.
What if the object is impossible to write on due to its size?
Then place it in the tray cup along with a written piece of paper that came with it. Although try your best to write in a partial line, since it's possible to lose the paper over time. Please write neatly so I don't end up cursing your name next year when I get around to them.
I remembered when he had his glasses on for the first time, and he's like, gosh darn it, whatever the name was, I can't read your writing at all. Okay. Can you sum up each tool and its use for me? Sorry if there's overlap.
It's fine. It's important to clarify. There's the water, the sieve, and the bowl for washing. Other instruments include brushes of various size, craft sticks, toothpicks, cloth and paper towels for drying. And when it's all written down and coated with nail polish, you can drop the items in the cups set up on the trays over there.
He pointed to row upon row of wooden trays, each with cups super glued to the surface. Some had bigger containers for the obviously larger objects too.
That way they'll dry out in the sun. I'll take care of everything when the lab work is done, so you don't have to worry about the rest.
Okay. Any tricks or tips you can think of off the top of your head?
other than what I've told you? Just be gentle and use your best judgment. Don't mix up the items, please, and be sure to clean up the utensils when you're all done.
Okay. Isn't it harder to extract DNA after you wash them? Plus, we're touching with our bare hands.
Even just breathing while you're digging contaminates exposed material. It's virtually impossible to avoid tainting samples unless you catch it early while excavating. We'd rather have items cleaned so we can identify their morphology or a possible Neanderthal manipulation of these items. Like burnt bone, cuts in bone from flint, tool manufacturing. The stuff I hope avoided ending up in the wet screening process and has its contacts marked and identified on the document.
Alright, I'm good now. I think I got everything. Thanks for the help, Hendrik.
Geen probleem. I'll mostly be helping out in the lab, working alongside the other students.
Hendrik drifted away to answer questions from other students while I gingerly unwrapped one of the items in the tin foil. It was a tiny tooth, with only minimal dirt attached to the root. At least it was an easy one to work with. I dunked a toothbrush into the water and began to scrub it. I dried it off and set it on the cloth, then uncapped the ink bottle and neatly dipped the nib into it. Gently, gently. I had barely touched the tooth with the nib when a giant splotch of ink dispersed and penetrated the root. It now resembled a squished black spider. All of Hendrik's help still didn't help Melissa at all.
Aw.
I cleaned the nib and scraped the blotch the best I could. It seemed to work, but it also scratched into the tooth. It's harder than it looks. I'm already missing the cave. Of course, this is where the real discoveries would take place, where everything was cataloged and identified for future examination. I would also be graded for my lab work, so it wasn't something I could avoid entirely. Time to see if I can finish this one at least. In the cave. And we failed. That's a good start. I never thought I'd struggle to figure out if something was bone or stone. I turned the thin brown piece in my hand while my thumb rubbed off some of the dirt attached to it. Luckily, it left an imprint in the soil, so I could return it to its original context, but I did not want to measure something that would reveal to be worthless. I thought about asking Sherry, but I already pestered her with a million questions this morning, and she was helping the other students. Turning off my music, I glimpsed at Kyler. He was kneeling down and jotting something on his fiche, using one of the protruding rocks as an improvised table. He was completely absorbed in his work, though. He's watching always. Don't figure it out for yourself. I tapped the rock surface next to the paper to get his attention, and he glanced up in response. Sensing the conversation, he raised his hand to his cochlear implant and switched it on. Sorry to bother you, but I have a question. I held up the object and he placed the pen down. It felt like a victory that I captured his attention.
What is it?
I'm stuck playing the bone or stone game. What do you think? He extended his arm and I placed the item into his outstretched palm. He held it up to the heat lamp beside us. The silent anticipation was agonizing, and I was surprised. Was Kyler stumped on it as well? Just when I was about to inquire, he moved his hand to his mouth and pressed the object against his tongue nonchalantly. What?
It's stone and not worth recording. You can toss it into the bucket.
I reluctantly held out my hand as he dropped the slightly damp stone into my possession. I'll just do this one. How could you tell by doing that?
Bone is porous and sticks to the tongue. This one didn't.
Oh, I get it. That makes sense. I tossed the stone into the bucket. Thanks, Kyler. It'll definitely be handy if I'm stuck again.
Be sure not to rely on it too heavily. Use your eyes and touch first. It's more of a last resort method.
Sounds like good advice to me. As tempting as it was to cheat and lick each discovered object, it probably wasn't the most professional procedure to depend on. Thank you, Boo. I mean, old Boo. I was braver this time. Instead of sitting at the end of the bench, I positioned myself right in the middle, hoping to mingle with other students. I eyed the carton of apple juice that was out of my reach. I did not want to stand up and reach over, since that would seem rude. However, I wasn't sure if I could communicate clearly to the people beside me. It was worth a shot, though, and I did try to brush up on my French when I had the chance. We're never asking for it in English again. Please, pronunciation, don't fail me now. I hesitantly extended my fingers toward the item. Excusez-moi. Pouvez-vous, s'il vous plaît, passer le jus de pomme? The girl clapped a hand to her mouth in shock, then excitedly gestured with one arm in the air. Quoi? Tous les mots? Elle parle français! Peux-tu répéter? Répétez! Repeat! I stammered out the line, but finished strongly. Moments later, everyone applauded. Merci. As the claps died down, I felt a little more welcome here. It was rather encouraging. But I wasn't getting my juice any faster. It seemed my thoughts were heard, and the juice carton appeared beside my plate. I glanced up, and the redhead across from me smiled. Hey, sweetie. Recognizing each other, we exchanged a grin. Merci beaucoup. You're welcome. And apparently Joan and I had met already again. I'm Melissa. Chantel. Sorry for the spotlight, but I thought a little cheering would help. It's fine. I appreciate it. I poured my drink while Joan eyed me curiously. Chantel, she is from the States. Yep, California to be exact. Beaches, bikinis, movie stars, and all that jazz. To come all this way, you want to be an archaeologist as well? Yes, I jumped at the chance to excavate at a Neanderthal site. I can't exactly do that back home. It's incredible to be surrounded by all this history. What about you two? What degrees are you taking? Chantel translated for me, and Joan brightened as she raised her fingers close to her cheek and wriggled them. Music! I play flute. Neat! How do you say flute in French? Chantel managed to relay the question to Joan, who giggled. La flute. Why am I not surprised? But isn't that nice? It helps with learning a language if many of the words are identical or similar. If all else fails, say the word in English. There's a chance we might understand. Are you monolingual? Well... I'm not sure if it counts, but solo hablo un poquito de español. Joan tilted her head while Chantel leaned in ardently. ¿Hablas español? ¿Me puedes enseñar español? Tal vez. Where did you learn it? My parents speak it, and I was much more fluent growing up, but I've sort of gotten rusty. Are you learning Spanish? Chantel pouted between a spoonful of cereal sprinkled with cocoa powder. I'd like to, but Spanish classes conflicted with my other courses. I want to go to South America or the Caribbean, so I'd like to master both English and Spanish. We both glanced back at Joan, who patiently tried to follow along. Chantel quickly summed up our conversation, and Joan nodded. Chantel wants to dig underwater. I'm interested in underwater archaeology. Sadly, this elective is not what I'm looking for, but the choices were pretty limited. I guess the cave can get damp occasionally if that counts. I admit underwater archaeology was not a field I had given much thought to. Why underwater? Are you... I still like this one the best. Hoping to uncover Atlantis? Chantel shook her head. Oh my goodness. Un moment. S'il vous plaît? S'il vous plaît, I think. I almost said por favor. Meh. 1 moment, please, is what I'm trying to say. Ahem. Okay. Please, I'm not into chasing myths or legends. I'm more into pirates and actual sunken cities. I'd like to excavate something like Port Royal, the infamous Jamaican city that was partially submerged after an earthquake. There's already been multiple investigations at Port Royal, and it makes me anxious. I really want to start enjoying something amazing like that. I feel by the time I graduate, everything about Port Royal will be studied and then left alone and forgotten like Grotte de Spy. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. Archaeologists rediscovered Pompeii hundreds of years ago, and the excavations are still ongoing. These things take time, like Gallant, of course. I paused to let Chantel summarize our conversation again. Joan responded in a sentence so soft I couldn't catch it. What did she say? Joan says she's a super slow digger in Grotte de Gallant. I know no archaeology. Chantel helps. More like I reassure her I'll help and then wonder if I should bother Mr. Dupont. I'm thankful for Mrs. Keller. She's very patient. And I guess there's Hendrik now too, right? He seems pretty approachable.
He is, and he's definitely geologist-y.
Chantal tilted her head toward the far end of the table. I could see him socializing with Sherry and Augustin, obviously playing catch-up. And he's beau, too. He's supervising the labs now. Maybe they won't be so boring this time around. Have you done them yet? Only recently. Sherry encouraged me to focus on the cave last week. The lab's not bad, but there's a lot to take in.
I find it tedious. Joan, I'm to le laboratoire?
Non. It is tedious? Boring?
If you'd like, maybe the three of us could work in the lab together. That'd be fun.
Sounds like a plan.
Joan picked up her empty plate and I did the same.
It was nice talking to you, Melissa.
Nice talking to you.
I'll see you both later. My grin didn't fade after we parted ways. It felt wonderful to branch out and introduce myself to more people. I finally made some female friends. Why did that take so long, anyway? Because we're going after a geeky boy and failing at the cave again. Ugh, I just want this layer over with already. My fiche is filled up and I got a ton of items in the plastic bag. I tentatively etched into the soil with my smallest trowel, trying to determine where this layer ended and the new one began. It wasn't as clear-cut as I had hoped. Hendrik did say the sediments were really consistent like a cake. I glanced at the glossy photograph, comparing the felt lines marked on it to my progress in the actual square. I might as well pester Kyler again and get his opinion, since we're practically working on the same thing. I yanked my earbuds out and turned down the volume. When I was done, I stuck my hand in front of Kyler's face and waved.
Oh.
He turned on his implant, though.
Yes, what is it?
I ignored his wary monotone and tapped my square with my trowel to direct his gaze. I summarized my predicament. So any idea where the new layer starts?
What's the layer you're working on now?
I quickly referenced my photograph. 3BMS, and I'm trying to see where 3CL starts. Shuffling out of the way, I observed Kyler intently as he rubbed the excess dirt off his trowel. With neat precision, he scooped out a bit of the exposed 3BMS soil and placed it on his hand. After wiping the trowel on his knuckles, he examined the sediments again.
Which spot are you uncertain of?
Right here. This time he carefully dug out a sample of the possible layer, leaving a visible mark. Once both pieces were in the palm of his hand, he placed his tool down and leaned toward me. I curiously peered down. What are you doing exactly? Are we going to compare them?
Yes, and I'll show you how. Here, your hand.
I obeyed, and he placed the first sample into my palm.
Try rolling it into a ball.
I sandwiched it and cycled my hands, feeling the dirt tumble between them. I held it up. However, there were cracks already, and I could feel it fall apart between my fingers. It sort of works. It crumbles easily, though, very gritty.
Sandy, even. Sand with a bit of loam. If it was pure sand, it wouldn't form a ball in the first place. Now for the second one.
I wiped my hands on my hoodie before I accepted it and repeated the process. This time the dirt held together quite nicely, and the texture felt smoother.
Does it feel like the same layer to you?
Not at all. I presented the rolled-up sample and Kyler took it back. He started to flatten the ball into a thread, but it broke before it could get thin enough.
It's loam.
Neat, you're good at this. He wiped his hands and hastily glanced away as he grabbed his trowel.
It wasn't anything spectacular. It's a method to test the soil texture. Besides, it's already explained.
What do you mean?
The names for each layer. It's not a bunch of random letters and numbers. They follow a structure. They use terms to help describe the sediment, whether it's texture, color, or grain size. 3BMS. The MS stands for marne sableuse, which means sandy loam. 3CM is loam.
Huh, it really is more straightforward than I thought. Are there any sediments you hate excavating?
The layers that are purely rock and stone are pretty annoying. And clay sediments. Clay is extremely adhesive,
and it's a pain to clean the trowel every few cuts to take the dirt off. The bottom layers of our squares contain clay.
Great. I picked up my trowel and examined the 2 spots Kyler had notched. Anyway, thanks for showing me that trick. Sorry to keep bothering you about this. I try to ask Sherry when I can.
I don't mind. If anything, you'll ask for help less and less as you pick these things up.
Oh, that's new. True, I'm starting to get more confident with the procedures. Kyler simply nodded as he became completely absorbed in his excavation again. I inserted my earbuds and cranked up the volume. There was one other positive to working beside him. I could play my music as loud as I wanted without it distracting him. Ow! Why? Don't fail, girl. No, girl, why? What kind of bone is this? A tooth? It was the size of the palm of my hand with wave-like ridges on the outside. Who should I ask? One more time with Sherry. Sherry, I have a question. Yes? What bone is this? It looks like a tooth, but... I handed it to her and she turned it over, examining it closely. Why, it's a tooth of a woolly rhinoceros. An upper molar, to be exact. How can you tell? Their molars have a very characteristic shape if you look at the ridge here. It's like a W. Right. You see this in horse teeth as well. It helps with sharing tough plant material. Still, you identified it so fast. Once you've worked with hundreds of them, it becomes second nature.
What are we looking at? Have we discovered something valuable?
Sherry turned and held up the tooth. Augustin barely glanced at it.
You've seen one silly Colladonta antiquitatis upper molar. You've seen them all.
At least I know for next time. Thanks, Sherry.
Sherry has become such an expert in identifying animal fauna, considering she started in forensics.
Forensics? Really? I know you teach it, but I didn't know that was your career, too. Yes, although the aims may be different, the goal is to identify human remains. In forensic anthropology, you mainly deal with recovering modern remains in a legal context, while archaeology is broader and spans history. Interesting. How did you get into archaeology? I was called in to assist a colleague with a sacred burial ground. We identified the remains for historical purposes and then reburied them again. Wow, I had no idea.
You could say she has literal skeletons in her closet.
True, most of the skeletons used in my classes are donations or being borrowed from those sites.
The rest are her previous lovers.
Augustin, you jest! Just my first husband. Melissa, you should resume cleaning now that we've identified the tooth. Right. Just won't poke that with a stick. Ow! Why, girl, why? Come on, you can do it!